see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Hello and welcome to Artifact Live, episode 44. Can you believe that? Today I've got a wonderful guest, Toby Maguire, who I'm going to talk and share and discuss meditation and storytelling. So with no further ado, Toby, welcome to Artifact Live.
Thank you, Scott. Privileged to be here.
We have had fun this morning, haven't we?
We have, yes. It's been an experience, a learning experience, as I like to call them.
I think this is I think I've now done, Toby, I've done about 300 hours of live broadcasting, and twice, week 1 and week 44 have been the twice I've had problems.
Okay, well, I've probably done about 15, and I've got to say about half of them, there's some sort of technical issue. So I'm sure it's something to do with me.
But we're recording this on Zoom. Your regulars will know that we usually use Restream, and you can ask Toby questions. But unfortunately, we're going to have to record this, and I'll put it out later on today as a pre-record. But if you have any questions for Toby, I'm sure Toby will be happy to
absolutely
answer those.
Please DM me via LinkedIn or whatever. That's absolutely fine. Love to answer your questions.
Fabulous. So Toby, where are you? Tell everyone where you're based.
I am presently in Phuket. I've spent most of the last 21 years here. I've lived abroad in other countries for a while, but I actually came here in 1998 to study meditation. And I was at this time, I was bored with my career back in the UK. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I started thinking, okay, if I had my perfect dream life, what would that be like? And funnily enough, the things that came up was I was very passionate about meditation. I'll talk to you a little bit about that later, how I got into it. I was interested in Thai boxing. I wanted to travel. And I wanted to change career. I used to work in the theatre. I used to be a lighting and sound engineer. Hated it. I didn't know you were. I didn't know you were in the theatre. Yeah, well, that's what I trained in. I trained as a stage manager. I was all backstage. I was never very good at remembering my lines and always got very nervous on stage. So I preferred it out the back. And that's what I trained in. And I went to college and I spent 3 years at the Welsh College of Music and Drama. Absolutely loved it. Went out in the big wide world and I just hated every single job I had. It became professional. All the fun got taken out of it. It was very serious. And I lost interest in it. And so that's why I was like, well, what shall I do? And as those were the things I was interested in, I knew I could teach English as a foreign language out in Thailand. So that's why I moved here. So that's really, and I've been living here on and off for about the last 21 years or so.
And do you like it?
I love Thailand. I love the Thai people. I love the culture. It's very gentle. It's very soft. They're very warm and friendly people, and they're very giving. And that's what has always attracted me to the country. Have you been here before, Scott?
I've been to Kamalea.
Okay, yes, that's right, yeah.
And I have to say that was obviously it's a particular type of environment because it's meant for meditation and for relaxation, etc., and the sort of Vedic principles. But I went with my partner Samantha, and we had such a good time. I mean, I can't even describe how good a time we had because the water is like a bath. It's so hot, and the people, as you say, I mean, every day we went out for a walk. Just to go local, to see locals, etc. And everybody was nice to us. You felt really safe. You felt really, they were genuinely smiley at you. So I mean, I know it was only a 2-week, experience, but it was that was marvelous. It was marvelous. And I remember I sat in a cave with a Buddhist monk meditating for 2 days.
Wow.
And gosh, it was some experience. Anyway, we'll maybe come back to some of those things. But so tell me, what's meditation all about? Why should people be? And I know it's in vogue at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about it. But I mean, you've been doing it professionally for a couple of decades. I've been meditating for a couple of decades. So both of us have got a thing about it. But what is it? What is meditation, and why do you think it's become the thing at the moment in the media?
Yeah, it's very complicated to kind of explain exactly what meditation is. Maybe if I tell you a bit about how I got into it, because it kind of will help people understand a little bit more about what meditation is and how it can help you. So the way I got into it is when I was about 18 years old, I started suffering from anxiety and depression. And this went on for a couple of years, and I started going downhill. And if anyone's ever been in that place, they realize, it's a very difficult hole to get out of. The future just looks dark, bleak, it's just like, why am I alive? I've got nothing to live for. And I just lost all the joy and happiness in my life. So I was kind of searching for a way out of it. And then I was living in Brighton at the time, and I used to pass this shop, and the incense used to come out of it. It used to play this really kind of spiritual, mellow music, the type of shops I'm talking about. And so I walked past it, and I went in there, and I picked up a book on meditation. And this was 1989, 1990. Nobody even knew what meditation was. So I just picked it up, what's this, read the back, calmness, peace of mind, confidence, all the things that I was missing in my life. So I bought the book, and I promised myself I was going to take it home, and whatever was written in that book, I was going to do whatever it said until I got my head back into a good place. And really that's kind of how I started. So I started meditating, and I meditate for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, most days. Half the time I fell asleep. I didn't really know what I was doing. But all of a sudden, what it did was it made, first of all, a couple of things happen. The first thing is that it gave me a tool that whenever I started having a panic attack, I knew I could automatically take my mind in towards my breath, just focus on my breath, and very quickly the panic attack would subside. And so all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, whenever I'm freaking out, I've got this tool that I can use to calm me down in difficult situations. So that was the first thing that I learned from the meditation. The second thing I noticed was it's almost like I stood back and observed my personality from an external perspective. And I started realizing a lot about my mind and a lot about my life and the way that I was acting, which was causing me the problems. And it made me realize that actually it was me that was causing the problems, not the external world. It was all in my head. And it just gave me a very fresh perspective. It helped me understand my mind and how my mind was working. And it gave me some sort of control over my mind. So when I was having the negative thought patterns, I could stand back and think, okay, I'm thinking negatively, but I can let them go. I can bring my mind back to the breath. I'm calm. And when I'm calm, I just naturally start to feel more relaxed and happy. So really that's what it can do for people. It's a way to control your anxiety, your fears, your worries, but it's also a way to stand back, let go of any negative thoughts that you don't want to entertain. And after a while of practice, you can choose to entertain positive and more productive thoughts instead. And this is why I think it's becoming very popular, especially among businessmen and businesswomen, because they need to be on the top of their game right now. And if they want to be on the top of their game, what better way than to learn how to meditate and how to control their minds?
Yes. That's very interesting. Thank you. I mean, my introduction to it, and I don't think I've told you this, it was also in 1989. And I had just finished my scientific career, and I had just got a job with British Gas. So I was on the corporate ladder, if you like. And they, at the time, they were a terrific company. They really were one of the best companies I've ever worked for. And they gave you a budget every year to do some personal development. And of course, I had no idea, I was arrogant, young, daft, I didn't have a clue, And one of my friends said, you need to go and see this guy called Jack Black. I don't know if you've heard of Jack Black, Mind Store, Jack Black. Have you come across Jack?
I don't think so. No, I haven't.
Right. He's very, very successful in the, well, let me tell you the story, then I'll talk about Jack in a minute. So I went along, it was actually in Edinburgh University lecture theatre where I used to lecture. So it was really odd going back to where I'd been working to see someone else speaking. And Jack did all this stuff, and I mean, I have to say, I really enjoyed it, but it's not for me. You know, he's into a lot of things that I don't think there's any evidence, or at least limited evidence for it. So it's not really my thing. Each to their own. But one part of it was, he said, "Look, we're going to do some meditation," and it was a guided meditation he did, but I didn't know that at the time. But he did a guided meditation, and he took us on a wee journey, and he got us to imagine something. He got our senses. He got us to salivate. He did also quite clever things with his voice. And he got us to open our eyes. And he said, "Right, everyone, write down how long you think you've just been meditating." So I wrote down 5 minutes or something, and he said, "Right, it was 26 minutes." And I was like, "What?" You know, and that was it. Got me. I was just fascinated by it, and I thought, I need to understand this. And then I went through the next couple of years without really. I had some illegally downloaded stuff, that guided meditations. But then eventually I went and had various teachers, and I've had local teachers. I've had teachers in Cheltenham and London and everything else. And I've been on silent retreats. So I really went for it. I really, really like it. And I think the best definition for me, I don't know what you think of this one. One of my coaches called it focused attention. And I quite like that, because you focus on what's happening in your brain. You don't control it. For me, anyway, I just focus on what's going on here. Why is that? And I had I think you'll know the word Kensho, the sudden insight from the Buddhist tradition. And I had a moment where they thought I had cancer in my nose, and I went along for a scan. I don't have cancer in my nose, I'm fine. But I went along for this scan, and I don't know if you ever had an MRI scan. It was they tie your head to a block, basically, and push you in. And I didn't know, but I suffer from claustrophobia.
Right.
And I'm in there with this bang, bang, bang noise, and I thought I could feel the panic. And I thought, no, go to your feet. So I was doing a body scan. And I went to my feet, and I did a body scan, and they took me out 40 minutes later, and I was fine. I controlled my mind by, maybe I was distracting myself. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it really, but that was, for me, that was my Kensho moment. I really had a sudden insight. I know I can do stuff with this. And I think that I think is why I like it, because I know I can. Something like what you said about, so does that resonate?
Oh, completely and absolutely. Yeah. It's a similar way to, when I had panic attacks, okay, straight into the breath, focus on the breath, and you take yourself into the moment, and then all of that little monkey mind suddenly shuts up behind you. But, as I think, we've discussed before as well, it's something that you can use by even if, as we're talking, as we are now, sometimes we're looking at somebody and they're talking at us, but we're not taking in a word that they're saying, because our minds might be worrying about, okay, maybe a relative's ill, or maybe we're worried about a work issue or something like that.
Yes.
But when you start, even though we're talking at the moment, if you're focusing on your breath at the same time as you're talking, it shuts off the monkey mind. So by focusing on the breath and having your ears open, it completely clears your mind. So you're much more open to what the person's saying, which means you can take in a lot more of their conversation, and you're listening to them, not hearing them, you're listening to what they're saying. And that's a big difference. So it's not just something, that people, we can practice it anytime, anywhere. We can use it as a tool when we're feeling stressed or anxious, or we can take ourselves away, sit in a corner, practice for about 20 or 30 minutes. And that brings the mind down into a calm state. And when your mind is calm, the biggest problem in the world feels like the smallest problem in the world. When your mind is worried and agitated, the smallest problem in the world can feel like the biggest problem in the world.
Yes. There was 2 things I was taught very similar to that. One was to basically push my nail into my thumb if I wanted to concentrate. And I thought this was perverted. I mean, I thought, what the earth are you talking about, But but that helps. And the other one I do, and I was taught this in Manchester at the believe it or not, the Hare Krishna place in Manchester. They taught me to use the tip of my tongue and to push it against my two front teeth. And when I was constant, because I was doing at the time, it was a really boring job I had at the time. I was doing recruitment, and I had the graduate recruitment, and there's nothing more boring than talking to 500 kids who tell you that they're a team player because they were in the university hockey team, and it gets really boring, But I owed it to them to pay attention, because it was important to them, So I used to push my tongue. It does help, though. It does help. It does help. Yeah. So how would you suggest to people who are watching, if they're interested, because we actually had quite a good, it's annoying that we're not live because there was a good response. There was over 100 people were going to join us just from LinkedIn today. So it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
They'll forgive us, they're used to it. What would you say to them? You know, how should someone start their journey? Because I don't think I did it very well. I mean, I think I was all over the place for probably 10 years, you know, maybe even more than that. So how would you suggest someone would start their meditation journey?
Okay, well, this is obviously very biased because like you, I had the same thing. So when I first started to meditate, like I said, I just picked up a book, I learned from a book and I just practiced. And that was a tool that started me off and that gave me some relief. But it wasn't until probably about 4 years later that I actually decided, okay, right, I'm so fascinated by this. It got me out of this state, you know, I want to learn more about this meditation. So the next step I did was I went to a Buddhist center. And at the time, this was, you know, I was a lad, I was a boy, I liked to have a few drinks down the pub. Going to a Buddhist center, I was like, you know, what was this strange Buddhism stuff? Because when I, you know, back before the internet days, I looked up meditation course. I found it in like a paper and it said Buddhist center. And I got dragged up as a Catholic. I hated going to church. I was very anti-religious. So I was very skeptical about going to a Buddhist center, but it was the only place that I went along. So I eventually drummed up the courage. I thought I'd go to this center, you know, as I was going in the doors, looking around thinking, God, I hope nobody sees me go in here. So I went into this Buddhist center, expecting there to be a bunch of monks. And the guy who ended up teaching the course was a guy who actually I worked with at Boop. I used to work for the insurance company like 5 years before I went to university. And he was the guy teaching the course. So straight away I was like, oh, thank goodness for that. And I did this course where they just taught me the basic mindfulness with breathing and the metabhavana, the meditation on loving kindness. And it was over a period of about 6 weeks. And I went along every Wednesday, I think, for a couple of hours. And that was a good start to learning how to meditate. So that was my first step. And what I noticed on the course is they taught me nothing about Buddhism, absolutely nothing about Buddhism. They just taught me to meditate. And that's when I started to feel very comfortable with this, because it's like, I'm not going to have some religion forced on me. It's not like that at all. And in fact, I started going to the London Buddhist Center and same thing. They never taught me anything about Buddhism. They just taught me to meditate. But I would say for the next 6 or 7, actually, until I went on my first Buddhist retreat in Thailand, which was, I think, when I was 30. So that would have been 2001. For the next 5 years, I just practiced the meditations I learned at the Buddhist center. And I felt like, same thing, I felt a bit stuck, like I wasn't really getting anywhere. And it wasn't really until I went on a Buddhist meditation retreat and I started training quite a lot with the monks out in Thailand that my meditation practice really began to flourish. I started to read it, practice it, learn a lot more about it. And that is when I think from that moment on, it took me on to another level. And I can honestly say that obviously I'm not saying this just because of who I am and what I do, but find somebody who can teach you to meditate, because you can waste years and years and years, you know, listen to guided meditations on YouTube, reading books about it. But if you don't have somebody who's got many years of experience and understands where you are and where you need to go, then a lot of the time, you know, you can practice it to make you feel calm, but spiritually and psychologically, you're not going to develop from it. And I think this is the important point, Scott, is when you learn to meditate on your own, you're going to have a tool that will calm you down and bring you to a certain level. But after a while, of being at that level, it's the same with anything in life. You're going to want to transgress. You want to improve yourself. This is human nature, as we both know. And in order to improve yourself, you need to have a teacher with experience who knows what they're doing. And this is why, you know, I've as well as teaching meditation for 15 years. I mean, I've been meditating myself for 30 years now. You know, I started when I was 20. I've just turned 50 now. So, you know, that's 30 years of experience. And I've learned from many, many teachers. I've learned from Taoist teachers. I've learned from Buddhist monks. You know, I've studied in India. I've studied with yoga instructors, you know, my Qigong masters. So I've learned many, many different skills. So having all that knowledge is something that you say, okay, this is the step that you need to take. You need to learn this step. You need to learn what mindfulness is. Then you need to know insight meditation. Then you need to know the physical, the body meditations. So you can do it step by step by step. And the other thing I think is important is understanding it from a Western perspective, which is where I believe that my talents are something kind of me. But
that's why you're on the show, Toby.
Yeah, but getting people to understand the Eastern philosophy in a Western terminology. Because, you know, if you start reading books on Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism, and you're not brought up in that culture, and you don't understand, you know, the kind of aspects behind it, you're going to get completely lost. It's going to be nonsense. And remember, a lot of this is translated from different languages.
Yes.
So a lot gets lost in the translation, and a lot gets lost in the culture as well. So when it's kind of diluted, you're like, what the hell? I don't understand this at all. And many books that I've read in Taoism that I read in my 20s or, you know, early 20s, I didn't get at all. But it was only when I'd been meditating for many years and read them again in my 30s, I'm like, this makes absolute perfect sense. I completely get this now.
Okay. That's fascinating, because I've had very similar, honestly. I mean, I've said to people about, you know, like some of the online, like, you know, Headspace and all. I mean, they're noble. They're doing quite a good thing, but it's not the same as having a teacher. Even, you know, because you've helped me virtually, and even that is better, I think, than Head. I mean, the Headspace is okay, you know, and Calm is quite good. I don't know if you know Calm. It's quite a good app.
Yes.
And I use Sam Harris as well. He's got a fantastic app called Waking Up that I love. But no, I think there's nothing like the personal touch. So can I ask your opinion on silent retreats? Because again, I've had some experience of that. Now, I used to live in the Highlands in a place called Elgin. And I used to go maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, maybe. But I used to go, you know, every year to Pluscarden Abbey, which is a Benedictine monk abbey. They offer for free. Well, you have to do the dishes and dig the garden, but you can go along there for as long as you like. And the accommodation's quite nice, actually. It's quite good. And I went for a week, and well, I'll maybe mention more about it. But what do you think? Is that something that you've tried, or would you recommend? And if so, and this is the big question, what the hell's going on in your head when you're doing? You know?
I've been same as you. I mean, I've been on many silent retreats. You know, I went on a 3-day one when I first started getting into meditation. I did a 3-day one in England, but all the others have been in Thailand and India. So my first meditation retreat, I'll tell you what, Scott, it was hard, very hard. And the reason was I just broken up with a girlfriend. And I was in Thailand. I was like, okay, it's all right. I'm going to go to my first Buddhist meditation mantra. I'm going to go away for 10 days, and I'm going to be at peace with myself, and all these, you know, thoughts and stuff would disappear. No. The exact opposite happened, because you've got to face your thoughts. You've got to face all of those things that, you know, we can usually switch on the mobile phone, distract ourselves with, you know, the TV, or, you know, look at the internet. Those weren't around in those days. But however, so I was meditating, and all of a sudden, all of these thoughts, this anger, this how could she have done that? All of this started coming out, and I really struggled with it. And the other thing was, like, I always remember the temple that I went in, we were allowed to see the abbot once a day to ask him any questions. Other than that, silent retreat. So, you know, we were supposed to, on the first day, there was a female, a lady monk there, you know, and she was German, and she taught me the basic principles of how to meditate. And it was, you know, similar to what I'd done before. And so she goes, okay, I want you to meditate for 5 hours today. And I was like, oh, okay. Standing meditation, sitting meditation, standing, sitting. So I did that. And, you know, my legs were really hurting. So I went to the abbot, and I said to him, he said, how's your meditation? I said, fine, but I've got really bad pain in my legs. And, you know, I told him about this. He said, okay. He said, tomorrow meditate for 6 hours. Okay. Well, obviously I'm not meditating long enough. That's going to get rid of the pain. So the next day I meditated for 6 hours, went along, same thing, you know, and I went up to the abbot, and I said, I've got this pain in my leg again, can't get rid of the pain. He said, okay. So all he said is, go, tomorrow meditate for 7 hours. I'm like, oh, this is the problem. I'm not meditating long enough. This is obviously the problem. So the next 3 days I went along with him, and all he said was meditate 8 hours a day, meditate 9 hours today, and it got to 12 hours. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go and see him anymore. So, but one of the things that I noticed was when I was meditating, rather than avoid the pain, it was there, And rather than sitting there thinking, oh, this pain is, this is wrong, why have I got this pain, and analyzing it, I absorbed my mind fully into the experience, and I took my mind into the pain. And rather than it being there as a distraction, it then became the focus of my meditation. And the pain, I wouldn't say the pain disappeared, but the thought, the interaction of the word pain, which is a negative connotation, and the experience itself was what was upsetting my brain. It wasn't the pain itself, it was my attitude towards the pain that was causing my discomfort. Yes. And I realized that by absorbing my mind into it, the experience was there, but it no longer frustrated me and irritated and upset me. And I think that was the, one of the most powerful things I learned on that was it's, our problems that we experience, they're not problems, they're empty. There's no, but it's our attitude to the problem. And that's what causes us mental anguish and agitation.
Okay. Wow. So can I, there's two quite challenging topics that I'd like to just ask your opinion on, because I struggle with them. So I don't know the answers, but one of the things that it's made me a lot of time think about is free will.
Yeah.
Do we have free will? Because when you meditate a lot, you do realize that, where did that come from? Things come into your head. You'll be meditating maybe to a sound or your breath or whatever, and then a dragon appears, or a football, or a car, or a person, and you're, what? And it just spontaneous.
Yeah.
What's that about? Any view on that? I mean, I'm confused. I don't know the answer, but
yeah, I mean, the thing I've realized about meditation and what it's made me understand more than anything else is at the end of the day, we know absolutely nothing about anything.
Yeah,
we know nothing about anything. We put words to things. Scientists are very good at putting words to things. Oh, this we can explain by this, and that's called a cell, and that's okay. Problem solved. And even religions, what do they do? Well, how was the universe came into being? Well, it came from God. It came from God. What's God, for goodness sake? It's like, okay, there it is. And all of these things that we kind of label them, and we kind of think, well, that gives them the answer. But at the end of the day, we know absolutely nothing about anything whatsoever. Yeah. So when we're meditating, we realize in the same way that we don't control our heart is constantly beating all the time. We're not sitting there thinking, okay, heart, beat,
please. Yeah,
exactly. We don't eat food and go, okay, food, digest, go into the small intestine, now go and into the large intestine. And now I go, it just happens. And the mind is exactly the same. So, one thing is, a lot of people tell me, well, I'd say, have you tried meditation before? They said, yeah, I tried it, but I couldn't stop my mind from thinking. Yeah. You cannot stop your mind from thinking. It's in impossible. The same way you cannot stop your heart beating. You cannot stop your food from digesting. The nature of the mind is to think. And what we're really doing in meditation is to stand back and observe the thoughts that are going on in our mind. And you'll notice how much rubbish, absolute, craziest stuff in the world starts to materialize.
Yes.
Now, some of the stuff that when we come, some of the stuff that comes up can be unresolved issues from the past. Yeah. And so those sort of things come up, and we need to address them. But when we're in a state of meditation, we're observing, we're letting them go, we're observing them, letting go. There's part of our subconscious mind, it tends to solve that particular issues. It helps us to see that particular issue in a certain different light. Yes. And when we can change and see that, like I said, change our attitude to it, then that problem will start to disappear. Like I said, the problem's not the problem, it's our attitude to the problem that makes it a problem.
Yes.
But, we also realize that there's constant stuff coming into the mind, and that's just the nature of the mind, and just let it go. When we meditate, we go into a deep state of focus, whatever it is we're focusing on. And the more we're into that particular state of mind, we can actually start cultivating thoughts, cultivating positive thoughts instead. So although the thoughts are always there, when we stand back from them and observe them, we don't become attached to them. They're not important in our lives. It's like we're watching them on a TV screen rather than actually experiencing them. You go into a war zone and you will be shot, scarred mentally for life. But if you're watching all this happening on a TV screen, it doesn't mean anything. And that's kind of what meditation does. It stands us back and it goes, oh, look, I'm thinking of that, but it's not actually real. It's not real. It's not actually happening. Yes. It's just the thought that's in my mind, and therefore I can let it go. And it makes you kind of understand that more and understand your mind more. Does that make sense?
No, that does that
answer your question?
I think it goes, I don't think that question is answerable, incidentally. I think it's the, it's the big question, isn't it? We don't really, but Tara Brach, who you may know her work, she what she says in one of her wonderful YouTube videos, she talks about things, you realize that some things are real, but they're not true.
Yeah.
So you might have a fear of something, like me in that MRI scan. There was no danger to me at all. But still, I was really, my mind was really scared. I mean, I was worried, but there was no truth in it. There was nothing was going to happen to me. And I think I quite like that frame to try and, when people ask me about it, I tried to say, well, look, we all experience things that worry us, that stress us. But to be honest, there isn't an outcome. There isn't the outcome that you're worried about. Doesn't happen, but we still fear it. We still worry about it. But let me ask the other question, because there's a second one, and this is the one I struggle with. Another one I struggle. I've got so many struggles in this area. I could probably talk about all day. But one of the things that I struggle with, because my training, I'm trained as a scientist and a biologist. So, and one of the things that distinguishes human beings from the animal kingdom is that we can think back and we can project forward. That's one of the things that makes us human. And yet, I frequently get suggested to me, and by teachers and by books and everybody else, you need to be more present. So if we're ultimately present, that makes us a dog, because the human is that ability to think forward, to plan, to aspire, to develop. Am I just misframing that, or where am I? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, the idea about being present is that we are not ruled by our past. That's the big thing. Sorry, Scott, I've got my aircon just on the kitchen. Is that we are not ruled by the past. So, for example,
you're showing off now. You've got air conditioning, aren't you? It's pouring so down here in England.
It's so hot out here. We although we don't realize it, a lot of what is going on in our mind is thoughts and projections from the past, or worries and anxieties about the future. And to an extent, I mean, it's very important that we learn from the past. So, our past experiences are very valuable, but we don't let the emotional content of the past distract the way we think about the future. For example, you've been going out with a girl and she's run off with your best mate. And of course, you're heartbroken and you're like, oh, women, there's no trust. You can't trust a woman. What happens is you meet another girlfriend and you're convinced she's eyeing up your mate, and you're carrying that emotional baggage and you're projecting it onto her, and then you're arguing with her, you're accusing her, you were looking at him, and of course she's not. She's just acting in her way, but you're projecting your mind, your thoughts on what you think is happening onto her. And of course, what's going to happen? That's going to completely destroy the relationship. She's going to dump you. You're the psycho jealous boyfriend who's following around all the time. So this is just an example of how sometimes, whether it's to do with success, whether it's to do with business, whether it's to do with money, we quite often hold that emotional content, but we need to let it go.
Yes.
Now, when we are here right now in the present moment, we can, although those experiences have happened from the past, we see the world as it is with more kind of fresh eyes. We see the world as it is, not how we think it is, which are two very different things. We're not clouded by our experiences from the past. Where we can understand, like things like, learning to ride a bicycle doesn't mean we have to wake up every day. We're in the present. Oh, I forgot now to ride a bicycle. How does this work again? We've got that experience, but we don't have the emotional baggage and the emotional fear, because sometimes that will also project us into the future. Like I said, you've had a bad experience from the past, that the future is going to be exactly the same. But when we bring ourselves back into the present, we can analyze it a bit more and say, yeah, okay, well, that happened in the past, but today's a different day. I'm a new person today. literally my body's changing, the way I think is changing. I'm a new person today, and let me see the whole experience with some clear eyes. Yes. And therefore that's why it's important, although it's important to learn from the past. And obviously, you know, if we didn't learn from the past, we wouldn't be able to tie our shoelaces up, we wouldn't be able to drive a car, all that. But to let go of the emotional attachment from the past that is kind of holding us back. Okay. So it kind of is there. And the more time we spend in the present moment, the more we stop being anxious and worrying about the future as well. And again, it brings us back when we're calm in the present moment, when we're in the present moment, a natural state of calmness and joy and happiness naturally arises from within us. Okay. And the reason that we suffer is because we're constantly in the past or we're in the future worrying. But when we bring ourselves here, right now, I mean, as we're sitting here, Scott, you know, there's no lions and tigers about to jump out at you. You know, you're perfectly safe. You're in a good environment. But if you're worrying about a work project that, you know, a deadline that you've got to meet, or your, you know, family member's ill or something, you could be here, you're perfectly fine, but you're worrying about something in your mind, and that's causing you disharmony right here and now in the present moment.
Yes.
So that's really, it's there. It's important, but we need to be as present as possible.
I tell you, thank you. That was fascinating. One of the symptoms or maybe consequences of lockdown that I've noticed in myself. Just like 2 weeks ago, I finally started to get some work back in again, and I've been doing live events and a couple of keynotes and stuff. I was really not as resilient as I used to be. You know, I really noticed it. I mean, I was in calls with a difficult client who was really struggling. It wasn't their fault. They were having issues, and they were blaming me. Nothing to do with me, you know. And normally it would be water off a duck's back. I'd be like, yeah, let's fix this, and I'm sitting there in the call, and I'm going, oh God, you know, have I got this wrong? Have I made a mistake? Have I done something? Have I not done something? And I was really questioning myself. And I always have some little, you know, inner critic saying, wait a minute, you can do better, but not as much as that. Is that something that other people have experienced, or you've seen other people experiencing, or is it just I'm weird?
No. This year, more than anything. And I think the reason why, and Scott, there were times that I realized that I was getting sucked into a little bit as well. The media, you know, we are constantly bombarded by, you know, COVID, death, fear, economies collapsing, and we've just been bombarded with this fear constantly. And you know, there are more people who have suffered psychologically, not just necessarily because of, you know, we've had work issues. You know, it's been a struggle for both you and I, you know, literally both of us overnight, you know, we've had a bit of a, you know, we've had to struggle with it. There's a huge shift going on, a huge amount of change. And, you know, people are talking about it all the time. Everything that was so normal to us. I mean, lockdowns, we've never had lockdowns, wearing face masks, you know, what is this, a killer disease? Well, we've known nothing about it. And we are literally bombarded. You switch on the radio, it's on the radio. You switch on the internet, it's on the internet. Switch on the news, it's just constantly coming from all areas. And slowly, it kind of builds up inside us, that panic and worry and what's going to happen, you know, and it's building and building and building. And it's just putting layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And it's not that specific thing. It's just everything else that's been going on around us. And I, you know, I'm lucky that I'm out in Thailand now, because I don't watch the news. I just switch it off. And, you know, when I go on Wednesday mornings, I go for a walk up the Big Buddha with some friends. It's on a mountaintop. We come down, we sit, and we all go for a coffee and a croissant afterwards. And I'm like, so what's going on in the world then? And they're, oh, well, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. And they're my news stories. And once I've heard them, it's okay, all right, don't really need to worry about anything quite yet. And that's it. And I think it's just a build up. And this is the same when people experience like burnout. You know, obviously a lot of people come to me for burnout. And all of a sudden, one day, they'll suddenly go into the office and they'll have a panic attack, and they'll have a freak out. They lose their breath, and they're like, what's gone on? And they think something's happened to them that day. It hasn't. It's been a buildup of stress and tension, sometimes over weeks, months, years. And it's just got to that stage where their brain, it's like a wire's just gone. And all of a sudden, that's the physical experience they're having. But it's a built-up of many different things, Scott. It's not just one thing. And so many people have been experiencing it this year.
It's been incredibly tough. And better not go there, because I get it's still, I mean, I still am struggling with it, because we lost so much you know, and we've now got, you know, debt that we never had, and, you know, everything else in it. But I know we are the same as everybody else, but being self-employed is not a good place to be.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, you're there. So it would be absolutely remiss of me, coming close to the end now, but it would be remiss of me not to ask this question. Two things. Do you ever get mistaken for the other Toby Maguire?
All the time. I get all the jokes. Toby, can you swing by my office sometimes? And hey, can I find you on the web? You know, I get it all.
It was in the comments when I put the ad out for this. I thought, oh, the poor guy, you know, leave him alone, you know.
I think some people, you know, because I work at these hotels sometimes, they get very excited because they're expecting Toby Maguire to turn up. And then like, oh, him? Is that it?
So that was such a rude question.
I'm waiting for the upgrade, but I never get it.
Right, okay. And then the second question, I mean, if anyone looks at your website, and I'll get you to give us your details in a minute in terms of contact, you've got some amazing testimonials.
Yeah.
How did you get working with the sort of the Hollywood types and the sports types?
Yeah, well, because I've been working in health and wellness resorts worldwide, and you know, the top ones like Chivasom, Six Senses. I've worked for Aman, I've worked for Shah, you know, Ananda Himalayas, Atmantan. And you know, these are just the ones who are happy for me to put their, you know, their quotes on my website. There are obviously a lot of others. You know, I've some members of the royal families I've treated. And basically, you know, some Formula One racing drivers, Premier League football players, etc. So these, you know, these are very expensive resorts. We get, you know, the top of the top come to these resorts, and you know, they have all my information in their rooms, and they come and visit. And, you know, they're at the top of their game. They're very stressed. They have a lot on their plate. And so I'm lucky enough to be in the right place. They come and see me. They have a talk with me. And so that's how I've managed to treat so many famous people. Right.
Okay. Because it's impressive. And it's quite nice. I like particularly the one in the chat. I mean, I'm not a Friends fan, but is it David? What's his second name?
David Baddiel?
No, him as well. No, the Schwimmer. You know, the guy who played
David Schwimmer, the guy from Friends. Yes, yeah. And
I thought his feedback was lovely. Actually, I thought it was really good. It was really good.
Super nice, super nice guy. That was quite some years ago. He's got an English wife, actually. Did you know that? I don't know if they're still. Yeah, I was very surprised.
Him and Jennifer Aniston are together. That's the big news. Okay.
That's really?
News. Interesting. Following the Friends reunion. Why are we talking about this? I don't even like Friends. Goodness sake. Right, okay, sorry, right. So listen, that has been fabulous, and thank you for being so patient with the technology.
No worries, Scott.
So if people, and I mean, I've been a pupil of Toby's, and I thought it was great, and we're still working together a little bit. I'm a nightmare to get hold of, but apart from that, it's gone really well. But if people want to see your work, or, you know, where's the best place? Because I know you do online free things, don't you, on a Tuesday, don't you?
Yes. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do some live in Instagram, just some meditations. But if people, I do every Saturday, I do a complimentary 1 hour kind of class. It's a bit of an introductory, helping people to understand a little about their minds. We do some meditation. That's every Saturday. That's complimentary. But if you're really serious about meditation, obviously, please get in touch. You know, I do one-to-one training, and, you know, it's life-changing for a lot of people. So, you know, if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to start off with a little bit of, you know, learn a bit about meditation on the freebies, then by all means, just message me, and I can send you the Zoom details for that.
Fabulous. It's been a pleasure talking to you, as it always is, Toby. And
likewise, Scott.
I'm looking forward to our next session. If you can ever find a gap in my blinking diary, which is probably says something about why I need to meditate. Anyway, so thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our chat today. I loved that, and despite the fact that we're not live, you're watching this on replay. Please, any questions you have, put them in the comments. I'll make sure Toby sees them, and I'm sure Toby would be delighted to answer any questions that you have.
Absolutely.
So thanks very much for tuning in to Artefact Live, where we look at the art and science of storytelling. And remember, keep a lookout for stories, because you know what? They can change the world. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care, Scott. Cheers. Bye now.